Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis and Mir Hashem. Today, we will be completing Daf Pei Beis Amid Beis as well as learning Daf Pei Gimel Amid Aleph. Before we begin our learning tonight, our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanesunim Batzaru Bashivya Haimdim Bein Bayam Bein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yitzem Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'Oiro Mishiba L'Geula Hashta Bagala Uvizman Kariv and Emarmein. Also, our learning should be a schus refuah shalema for Ariel Yosef ben Miriam Rezel, Meir ben Chayes Sarah, and Chava Hadassah bas Rezel Serel. They should have a refuah shalema b'seich shar Chayei Yisrael. So, the last time we met, we were on Pei Beis, Amid Beis, Siman Kof Ayin Ches, Sif Gimel. We did not complete Sif Gimel. We are on Pei Beis Amid Beis, 2 lines off the bottom, in the middle of the line, near the end of Sif Gimel, by the word Avol of the Mechaber. So here in Sif Gimel, the Mechaber told us the first halacha in Sif Gimel, somebody is in a gan, somebody is in an orchard, and in the orchard there are many trees, and maybe it's a mixed fruit orchard, or maybe it's apples and oranges and pears, or maybe it's an apple orchard, but there's all sorts of types of apples. On one side you have Honeycrisps, on one side you have Granny Smiths, and in the middle you have Cortlands and Golden Delicious and what have you. And this person is going apple picking, and he wants to taste all of the different apples. So the Mechaber told us, if you're in a gan and you want to taste from each tree, the Mechaber said, if you make a Borei Pri Ha'etz on the fruit of one tree, you don't have to make another Borei Pri Ha'etz to eat from any of the other trees, with the caveat, however, you have to have had das when you made the original Borei Pri Ha'etz that you're going to be eating from all of the various fruit trees. That's the halacha that Mechaber told me. Now, the Mishnah Berurah right away, in Ois Katan Lamed Zayin, had a problem with how to deal with this halacha. Why? Because the Mechaber discussed another case with a tree earlier. Earlier on, in Sif Beis, on Pe Aleph Amid Beis, the Mechaber discussed a case where somebody is sitting in a park, and he's sitting back, and he's leaning against a fig tree. And he is b'mizracha shel te'ena. He's sitting on the east side of the fig tree, and he makes a bracha, and he starts eating, and then he goes from the east side of the fig tree to the west side of the fig tree. So he got up, and he moved to the opposite side of the fig tree. The Mishnah Berurah told us it's a big tree, so he cannot see his original place from his second place because the size of the tree. The tree is mafsik between the west side and the east side, and it's big enough that you can't see around it. So, therefore, said the Mechaber, you moved from the east side of the tree to the west side of the tree, that's a shini makayim, and you must make a new bracha. So now, over here, in Sif Gimel, the Mishnah Berurah is a little bit confounded. How is it possible that when you're talking about the east side of one tree to the west side of another tree, you need a new bracha, and yet, if you go from one side of the orchard where you made a Borei Pri Ha'etz on a Macintosh apple, and now you go 200 feet away to the other side of the orchard, and you're eating now a Granny Smith apple, and you have all sorts of trees that are intervening between place 2 and place 1, so it's not possible that you could see from one to the other. How is it possible, wonders the Mishnah Berurah, that in that case, according to the Mechaber, you do not have to make another bracha? That was the question that the Mishnah Berurah was faced with. And the Mishnah Berurah gave us 2 answers. The first answer that the Mishnah Berurah gave us was, there's a very big difference between the case of Sif Beis and the case of Sif Gimel. In the case of Sif Beis, when we're dealing with the east side of the tree and the west side of the tree, the person is sitting in an open field, in an open park, and he's sitting and he's leaning on the, pardon me for 1 second, I have to respond to an urgent message over here. Okay. So in the case of the east side of the tree and the west side of the tree. The person is sitting in an open field, in an open park. He's not surrounded by any mechitzos. Therefore, when he goes from one side of the tree to the other side of the tree, that constitutes a bona fide shinei makom. Over here, in our case, where we're talking about an apple orchard, and the fellow is going from one side of the apple orchard to the other side of the apple orchard, that does not constitute a shinei makom, because he's in a fenced-in orchard. He's considered in makom echad. So at worst, says the Mishnah Berurah, when he gets up from the Macintosh tree or the Honeycrisp tree and he goes to the other side of the orchard to the Granny Smith tree, in that case what he's doing is he's going mecheder lecheder bebayis echad. If you're going mecheder lecheder bebayis echad, we learned earlier that das helps. The Ramah told us that you're going mecheder lecheder bebayis echad. If you had das, the das helps, and you don't need another bracha. We said in the name of the Haitika Paiskim that mecheder lecheder is assumed das. You don't have to have beferish das. But whatever it is, says the Mishnah Berurah that a fenced-in orchard is considered like a bias echad, and when you go from one end of the orchard to the other end of the orchard, that's mecheder lecheder b'bayis echad, and that's why in the case of Sif Gimel, the Mechaber says das helps. That was the first teretz that the Mishnah Berurah gave. The second teretz that the Mishnah Berurah gave was a much bigger chiddush. The second case that the Mishnah Berurah gave was no, the orchard is not fenced in. But even though the orchard is not fenced in, since it is an apple orchard, right? You go apple picking, so they tell you, oh, you paid your $5 to go apple picking, then they give you directions, and they tell you go down the road to the orchard. So that area where all, let's say, 50 trees are, that is called the orchard. So even though it's not fenced in, it's still called makom echad. But if you're sitting in an open park and there happens to be a fig tree, and you were leaning on the east side of the fig tree, and then you went to the west side of the fig tree, that's not a makom echad. So that we should say that when you went from one side of the tree to the other side of the tree, that's mecheder lecheder b'bayis echad. There's nothing that defines it as its own unique area. Masha'enkein, when you're in the orchard, you're in one unique area, and therefore, even though you uprooted yourself from one side of the orchard and you went to the other side, that is, again, at best, mecheder lecheder b'bayis echad, and therefore, if you had das, one bracha suffices. So that's what we learned, basically, in the previous year. That's the beginning of Sif Gimel. Now we come to the end of Sif Gimel, says the Mechaber, one line off the bottom of Pei Beis Amud Beis, in the middle of the line, Aval. Says the Mechaber, Aval migan ligan, but if you go from one orchard to another orchard. So now let's say you went to the apple orchard, and you were picking all sorts of different apples in the apple orchard, and next door to the apple orchard, there's a pear orchard. So now you went from the apple orchard to the pear orchard, or you went from one orchard where there are 20 trees that are Honeycrisps, and now you found out that there's next door, there's another group of trees separated. It's not one orchard. Maybe there's a section of 30 trees, then there's a road, and then there's another section of another 30 trees. And those 30 trees are the Granny Smiths. If you went from one individual orchard or garden to another one, then then you have to make a new bracha, even if they happen to be very close to each other. But again, we're not talking here about a scenario where you have rows of trees and some of them are Macs and some of them are Granny Smiths and some of them are Honeycrisps. Even if it would be one orchard and one row in the orchard is Macs, the next row is Honeycrisps, the next row is Golden Delicious, but that's a gan echad, that's one orchard. What we're talking about over here is that there are two distinct groupings of trees. There's one grouping of trees over here, that's the Honeycrisps. Then away from it, there's another grouping of trees over here, that's the Granny Smiths. That's already migan ligan. Says the Mechaber of migan ligan. If you go from one orchard to the next, tzarich levarich, you need a new bari priya eitz afilu heim smuchim, even if they happen to be very close to each other. Va'afilu im kisheberach tchila yadaitai ala koil. And even if, when you made your original bracha on your first apple in orchard number 1, you had das on orchard number 2, it doesn't help. Why? Because now we consider that you're going mibayis lebayis. Now we don't look at it as mecheder lecheder bebayis echad. Now we look at it as going mibayis lebayis. Says the Mishnah Berurah Oiskat and Lamites. Va'afilu, the Mechaber told us, even if you had das when you made the original bracha, still when you go to the next orchard you have to make a bracha. Says the Chavetz Chaim mishum shini makayim, because now you have a problem of shini makayim to have it kimi bayis labayis, because now you're dealing with bayis labayis, to loy mahani daita l'kulei alma, where das isn't going to help you. Like the Mishnah Berurah told us at the outset of this Siman in his very beautiful Hakdama, nobody suggests that when you make a shini makayim mibayis labayis, das is going to help. Das doesn't help. That's a bona fide shini makayim. And says the Chavetz Chaim, this is true. Afilu ein hagan mukaf mechitzos. Even if you look at these two orchards and you say, wait a second, why are they so distinct one from the other? They're not each separated by fences. It's not that orchard number 1 where the Honeycrisps are has a fence around it, and you have to leave that fenced-in enclosure and now go into another fenced-in enclosure where the Granny Smiths are. It's not that way. Maybe it's all open. Doesn't matter. Still in all, it's considered a shini makayim. Kevan shekal echad hu b'fnei atzmai. Since each grouping of trees is distinct, this is one grouping of trees and this is another grouping of trees. Chashavu kamay shnei batim. It's now considered mibayis labayis, not mecheder lecheder. Va'afilu raya mekaymi arishan gamken enamayil. And says the Chavetz Chaim, even if you could see the Honeycrisps where you made the bracha from the Granny Smiths that you want to eat now, you still need a new bracha because it's considered shini makayim, it's considered bayis labayis. Okay, now a tangential halacha, very interesting halacha that the Chavetz Chaim puts in over here in Oiskat Lamites. Mi sheberach al hapri, if somebody makes a bracha, somebody's holding an apple, and he makes a bracha, baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam bari priya eitz, and he doesn't take a bite yet. So mi sheberach al hapri lechol kan, somebody made a bracha on an apple, having in mind to eat over here, where he is. V'lo yachal mimenu, but then he doesn't eat the shina mekaymai, and he makes a shina makayim. He goes somewhere else before he eats. Kasav El Yerabba b'shem Birkas Avram. The El Yerabba writes in the name of the Birkas Avram, de'ina yoytze b'brachasai, that he's not yoytze with his bracha. He needs a new bracha. In other words, let's take this one line at a time. What the Mishnah Berurah is telling me right now, in the name of the El Yerabba, who says it in the name of the Birkas Avram, is that we've been learning until now the concept of a shini makayim when you made a bracha and your bracha was chal. You made a bracha on an apple and you took a bite of apple. So your bari priya eitz was chal and it allowed you to go ahead and eat apple. Now you walked out of the house. So now you made a shini makayim. That shini makayim constitutes a hefsek between the bari priya eitz that you made originally and the bite of apple that you want to take now after you made a shini makayim. So now you have a hefsek. Since you have a hefsek, you need a new bracha of bari priya eitz. That's the concept that we've been learning about until now. Now the Chavetz Chaim is introducing to us a new concept, and that is, what if you made a bracha and the bracha was never chal? You made a bracha and you never took a bite of the apple. And now you made a shinui makayim between the bracha and the eating. Now we know that you're not allowed to do that, right? Let's say somebody made a bari priya eitz, and after he made a bari priya eitz, he starts a conversation with his friend. You're mafsik. You made a hefsek between the bracha and the achila. You're not allowed to do that. So too over here, you made a bracha and then you made a shina makayim before you ate. So the bracha wasn't chal. You made a hefsek between the bracha and the eating. So again, mi sheberach ala pri lechel kan v'lo yakam mimenu v'shina mekaymai kasav el yirabah b'shem birkas Avram deina yoytze b'berchasai. Now, question is, what constitutes a shina makaym in the context of this halacha? Let's say you made a bracha standing in your kitchen, and before you ate, you took 2 steps to the left. Is that a shina makaym? No. We've been learning the halachas of shina makaym until now. We know that ba'oisai cheder, in one room, even if you walk from one side of the room to the other side of the room, that's not a shina makaym. We also know that according to the Paiskim, if you go mecheder lecheder b'bayis echad, even without das, there's assumed das, and we don't call that a shina makaym. So if you take an apple and you make a bar priyates and then you walk across the room, or you walk from the kitchen to the dining room, that's not a shina makaym. That's going to cost you the bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah in the brackets, according to what I wrote earlier, says the Chavetz Chaim, in the Bir Halacha, that was a very long Bir Halacha, hu dafka mi bayis labayis. This problem would only be mi bayis labayis, or if you walked out the front door, even if you didn't go into somebody else's house, but you made the bracha bar priyates in your house, and then you walked out, you left your house before you took a bite of the apple. You lost the bracha. You would need a new bracha. Now he brings down an interesting halacha from the Chayadam, which is going to come more into play later in today's shir. The Chayadam writes, even if you're holding the apple in your hand, and you're walking and eating, yesh by mishum shini makayim, there is a problem of shini makayim, im yatsa mimekayim harishain shekava atzmai lechel, if you make a shini makayim from the original place where you set yourself up to eat, lecheder acher, and you went to a different room, and you didn't have das. In other words, the Mishnah Berurah is going according to the world according to the Chavetz Chaim. The world according to the Chavetz Chaim is mecheder lecheder is a shinei makayim if you didn't have das. We hold that mecheder lecheder b'bayis echad is not a shinei makayim, even if you did not have das. But let's imagine a real shinei makayim. Okay, the chiddush of this Chayadam is you made a bari priya eitz on an apple inside your house, and you took a bite of the apple. So the bracha was chal, and the bracha allowed you to eat from the apple. Now you're still holding the apple in your hand, and you walk out the front door. So now you have a bona fide shini makam. You left your house. This is a bona fide shini makam, no question, right? And even in the world of the Ramah, this is a real problem because we're talking about peiros. We're talking about a bari priya eitz. So we're talking about dvarim she'enam tzrichim bracha b'mkayman. Right? There's nothing forcing you to go back for the bracha achrona bari priya eitz. You can make the bari nefashos wherever you are. So again, you took an apple, you made a bari priya eitz, you took a bite in your house. Now you walked out the door holding the apple, right? But you made a bona fide shini makam. Now you might have thought that since I'm holding the apple, I'm taking the food with me. It's not where, let's say, I made a coffee in my kitchen, I took a drink of coffee, I put the coffee down on the kitchen table, and I walked out the front door to schmooze with the mailman. Over there, I understand there's a shina makayim. I uprooted myself from my coffee. I left my coffee. Not only did I walk out of the house, but I left my coffee in the house. So certainly that would appear to be a shina makayim. But over here, I'm dealing with a new case. Over here, I'm dealing with a case where I'm holding the food in my hand. I still have the apple. I took the apple with me. You might have thought that that's not a shina makayim. Says the Chayadam, yes. Over there, it's also a problem, shina makayim. Why, says the Chayadam? Very simple. T'chol petisa u petisa. I've seen different Mishnah Berurahs where they have a girsa here, psicha u psicha. That's not the girsa. The girsa is t'chol petisa u petisa. Each piece of the apple, hu davar acher, is a different achila. So the Chayadam is saying, what's the yichus that you're holding the apple in your hand? So what? You ate a bite of the apple in the kitchen, you swallowed it, Now you walked out the front door. Now you want to take another bite of the apple. Shina Makim. There's nothing attaching the achila that you want to do outside the door after the Shina Makim to the achila that you did before you made the Shina Makim in the kitchen. It's a bona fide Shina Makim. It's not, you didn't continue eating. You took a piece, and now you take another piece. Each one is its own achila. So the second achila that you want to do after the Shina Makim is after a Shina Makim. Shina Makim is a problem. You need a new bracha. So says the Chayodam. According to, again, Chavetz Chaim says, according to what I wrote in the Bir Halacha earlier, Yesh Lizar Bazer Rak L'Chatchila. He says, we only have to worry about this Chayodam L'Chatchila. Aval B'diavad, Ein Lachzor Levarik Machma Shina Makim Shemecheda L'Cheder. Okay, he's talking about Cheder L'Cheder. Cheder L'Cheder, he says, you only have to worry about it L'Chatchila, not B'diavad. We're not worried about Cheder L'Cheder at all. But if it's a bona fide Shina Makim, if you left the house, then yes, we have to worry about this Chai Yodam. And again, we're going to revisit this Mir Hashem later in the shir. But what you see right over here is, again, I want to give you the scenario, very clear. You made a bari priates on an apple in your kitchen. You took a bite of the apple in your kitchen. Now you walk out of the house with the apple, and you want to take another bite of the apple outside the house. You made a bona fide Shina Makim. Holding the apple in your hand doesn't help you. Why? Because, so what, you're holding the apple in your hand? You did one eating inside the kitchen. Now you want to take another bite outside. That's a separate eating. That second eating that you want to do after you made a Shina Makim requires a Bari Priates. You had a Shina Makim. You need a new Bracha Rishona. Okay. Now we come to Sif Dalid. And Sif Dalid presents us right away with a problem. We're going to be faced with a challenge instantly in Sif Dalid, because according to the Shitas HaMechaber, what the Mechaber says here at Sif Dalid doesn't seem to start. Remember, according to the Mechaber, Shina Makim, the problem of Shina Makim applies equally to Dvarim Hatzrichim Bracha Bimkaiman, to foods that require a Bracha Achroina in the place where you made the original bracha and you did the original eating. So let's say pas. Pas is dvar matzvichim bracha bimkaiman. So when you make a bracha on pas, you make a hamoitzi on pas, it's dvar matzvichim bracha bimkaiman because you must come back for Birkas Hamazon. But in the world of the Mechaber, there is no difference between dvar matzvichim bracha bimkaiman and dvar she'enam tzvichim bracha bimkaiman. No matter what kind of food and no matter what kind of bracha it is, if you make a Shina Makim between your original bracha and now an eating that you want to do later, you need a new bracha rishona. Not only do you need a bracha rishona, but before you do anything else, you have to make a bracha achrona. So you have to bench on your original eating before you even do anything else, right? That's the world of the Mechaber. Yet, comes along the Mechaber over here in Sif Dalet, and the Mechaber seems to say a very difficult thing to understand. Says the Mechaber, Im ochel pas b'mokim echad. If you went, you washed Netilas Yadayim, you made Amoitzi, and now you're eating pas b'mokim echad. You're eating a lechem in one place. V'chazar v'ochel b'mokim acher, and now you want to go eat pas in a second place. Now, right away, in the world of the Mechaber, this doesn't seem to start. Because if you made a hamoitzi and you ate lechem in one place, and you want to go to a second place, the first thing that you have to do is bench. After you bench, you have to make a new bracha rishona. So we're going to have to see how this case of the Mechaber even starts. But this is what the Mechaber says. Imachal pas b'makom echad. If you made a hamoitzi and you ate pas b'makom echad, v'chazar v'achal b'makom acher. And now you want to go ahead and you want to continue eating pas in a second place. Says the Mechaber, Einam avarich birkas hamazon ela b'makom hasheni. Right away the Mechaber jumps to cover the halacha of benching. Says the Mechaber, now you have to bench. Now you ate pas in place number 1, you ate pas in place number 2. Where are you supposed to bench? What's called mikaimai? This is dvarim shetzrichim bracha bimkaiman. What's called bimkaiman? Says the Mechaber, ela b'makom hasheni. You're going to bench in the second place. Like we see, those who are traveling, this is what they're accustomed to doing. They eat while they're traveling, and the yoshvim umevarchin b'mkayim siyam achilasam. Where do they bench? So they're traveling, right? So they're eating salami sandwiches while they're traveling. They wash the tilsidayim, and make hamaitzi at mile marker number 50. Then they eat the sandwich. They arrive at mile marker number 75, and that's where they finish eating, and that's where they're going to bench. Now, again, we have to figure out right away how in the world of the Mechaber this case even starts. How is it possible that you ate pas b'makom echad and you continue eating pas b'makom sheni? How are you allowed to do that? So let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mishnah is cut mem. V'chazav ha'achal, says the Chavetz Chaim, af l'dasa mechaber le'el b'sif aleph u'beis. Even though we saw very clearly the shitas ha'mechaber in sif aleph u'beis, also le'ekol b'makom ha'sheni asmach suda rishayna. How is it that you're going to a makom sheni and you're eating pas al smach of the original hamaitzi? You're not allowed to do that. Shinim makom. Ella rather tzarich levarich mikayna birkas hamazon al achila rishayna. Really, first you had to bench on the first eating that you did, v'hamaitzi al lahaba, and then you have to make a new hamaitzi out of the pas that you want to eat mikanu lahaba. V'gam daita loy mahani mibayis labayis, and you can't tell me, oh, they had das. Das doesn't help. If it's a bona fide shinim makom, let's say mibayis labayis, das doesn't help. Tzarech loymar, what you have to say is, and it's a shtickle pellet that the Mechaber didn't spell this out, but says the Chavetz Chaim, tzarech loymar, you have to say, dekan mayri shekvar ochal. What we're talking about over here is an avarian. He did something that he wasn't allowed to do. He made hamaitzi on his pas, he went and he ate b'makom arishain, and then he was an avarian, and what he did was he got up, he made a shinim makom, he went to place number 2 where he's really not allowed to eat without a bracha rishayna, and kala oichel kala dena ba'olam hazeh b'loi bracha kilu geisel me'akadosh baruch hu miYisrael, and now he eats b'makom sheni even though he wasn't allowed to. And on that case, says the Chavetz Chaim, but now you want to know what should he do with benching? Does mavarach b'makom hasheni d'gam zeh mekaymehu. The bottom line is he could bench b'makom hasheni, because since he continued eating in makom hasheni, the makom hasheni became mekaymei. According to the way we paskin like the Ramah from Sif Beis, by us, this is only a problem lechatchila, because we paskin like the Ramah that by pas dvar matzrichim bracha b'mkayman, then you are really allowed to get up and go eat b'makom sheni. Right? Because there's no problem with shinim makom at pas, according to the Ramah. The Ramah said, lechatchila, better you shouldn't make a shinim makom. But really, there's no problem with shinim makom. So according to us, it's only problem lechatchila. Avalim kvar akar, but if somebody didn't listen to the lechatchila, somebody got up from his Friday night Shabbos Suda, and he went next door to continue eating by somebody else, lechatchila, he wasn't supposed to do that. But he did it. He's allowed to eat next door al smach the suda rishayna. And if he had das to go next door for the shalom zachar when he washed, then it's even lechatchila. And the chiddush of Sif Dalet is that when it comes to benching, you're going to bench b'makom hasheni. You bench in the second place, because where you end your suda in makom hasheni, that's the place that you bench. And the Mechaber said that this is k'moshe nagu holchei drachim. He told us that, what do you mean? The holchei drachim do this all the time, says the Mechaber, that they eat while they're traveling. And we don't see a problem of shinim makom. Now, again, this is very, very interesting to me. We don't have a sif cotton over here in Siman Kofar Ches where we're talking about shinim makom, when the Mechaber gets up and says, you should know, even though I'm telling you that I'm very machmer with shinim makom, and shinim makom is even a problem by a suda ala pas, by dvar matzrichim bracha b'mkayman, but you should know there's a heter for holchei drachim. Holchei drachim are allowed to make a bracha hamaitzi at mile marker 100, and they're allowed to go continue traveling and eat their salami sandwich between mile marker 100 and mile marker 150, and it's not called shinim makom. We don't have a sif cotton like that in Shulchan Aruch. Instead, what we have over here is just agav orcha almost. In Sif Daled, the Mechaber tells me, what do you mean? What do you mean? Holchei drachim do this all the time. Obviously, Holchei Drachim eat while they're traveling. It's a shtickle chiddush, right? But he never pointed it out that way. He just says, K'moshe nagu Holchei Drachim. So now let me ask you, Taka, why is it okay? Why is it okay for Holchei Drachim to do that? We saw, I'm going to bring it up again, we saw in Sif Beis that even from the east side of the fig tree to the west side of the fig tree constitutes a Shina Makayim. You need a new Bracha Rishona. So I don't understand. If I make a Maitzi on my salami sandwich, and then I get in the car and I travel 5 miles, then I don't need a new bracha? That's not a Shina Makayim? What, how many thousands of feet did I travel? And yet, the Chaber is saying, what do you mean? Holchei Drachim are okay. So let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah's Cotton Membeis, where the Mishnah Berurah says, Holchei Drachim, Deheim L'kuli Alma Mutar Lehem Lalach V'lechol. Because, says the Mishnah Berurah, everybody would agree that Holchei Drachim are allowed to eat while they're traveling. And that's true, even if by the time they arrive in their second place, it's totally impossible to see the place where they made the original Bracha Rishona because it's 3 miles away, and you don't have a telescope. Or because there's trees and buildings and a mountain in the way. Why? Why is this okay? Mishum dehem loy kavu atzman lechatchila lecha b'makom sheberchu. You know why it's okay? This is not a shinui makayim because there never was a makayim. Shinui makayim assumes that when you made your original bracha, you made your original bracha in order to eat in a certain place. So you are kaveya yourself to eat in a certain place. But if you're traveling, you never had a kviyas. I wasn't kaveya myself to eat at mile marker 100. I'm traveling. I broke out my salami sandwich now, and I made the hamaitzi and I started eating. But I'm traveling. So there's not a shinui makayim. I never had a makayim in the first place to be mashane. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here. They never had a kviyus to eat in the place that they made the original bracha. Their whole intent and their whole plan was to travel and eat. So it's not called that they uprooted themselves from their original place because they never had a place. They never set a place marker that they should now be considered making a shinui. But on the other hand, let's say you stopped on Route 80, you stopped at a rest stop, and you had in mind to make a moitzi and eat the salami sandwich at the rest stop, and now you changed your mind and you decided to leave. Now you want to get back in the car and continue eating while you're traveling. So then, then as long as you could see the place that you made your original bracha, you could continue eating. But once you can't see it anymore, you need a new bracha rishona. Now again, this is the world, that's so far the world according to the Mechaber, where Shida Makam is a problem even by Pas. By us, Shida Makam is not a problem. Certainly not b'di'evid by Pas. U'b'peiros tzarech lavar shenis. So by us, on something like an apple, you would have to make a new bracha. U'b'pas gamkein afladas ha'gal le'ela kol panim l'chatchila ein lehem laker m'mkayim b'loi bracha k'buvu risham. Even according to the Ramah, l'chatchila, you shouldn't do this. You made a bracha at the rest stop, planning to eat at the rest stop. Don't get back in the car and start traveling. I'll smach your original bracha. You're making a shina makayim, even though it's by pas, which technically you could do, but the Ramah, the Mishnah Berurah told us that lechatchila we shouldn't do that. But let's say you stopped at the rest stop at Route 80 and you told everybody, all right, guys, make a bracha, start eating, but in 5 minutes we're getting back in the car and we're continuing, whether you finished eating or not. So now the das was that I'm traveling. I'm not kaveh makam because I'm traveling. So then it's okay. But And this is where the Mishnah Berurah, where the halacha gets complicated. If you started eating in the house, for halach l'derech, and now you walked out the door to go traveling, that's a bona fide, a real class A, tier 1 bona fide shinamakam. It's mibayis labayis. Hareu k'may mibayis labayis, t'loy mahani daita beperes, v'sark lachs l'varech, u'bepas mahani daita v'aflinin l'chatchila. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here, I'll give you a very normal case. Somebody got up Shabbos morning and he made a coffee. And he made a shahakal on his coffee in his kitchen. And he started drinking his coffee in the kitchen. Then he looks at the clock and he sees it's late. So he wants to walk out the door and he wants to drink his coffee on the way to shul. Now, I'm not getting into the shilas of achila begas, achila b'shuk. I'm not getting into that right now. We're talking about hilchos brachas. So a guy, again, he made the shahakal in his house. He started drinking in his house. And now he walked out the door. And now he wants to drink the coffee on the road. That's this case over here. Omnam, said the Mishnah Berurah, im hizkel lecho babayis, if you started to eat in the house, v'halach l'derech, and now you walked out to go travel, hareyu k'may mibayis l'bayis t'loy mahani daitoi beperis. Das doesn't help. Das doesn't take away the shina makam problem when you're going mibayis l'bayis. V'tzarch lachzor l'varech, you need a new bracha rishona. So I spoke to Paiskim today, and what the Paiskim told me is like this. It's a very interesting tshuva in the Igros Moshe, a very interesting tshuva from the Yeshiva Zatzal. And the title of the tshuva is Chewing Gum and Candy. Somebody has a candy in his mouth, or somebody is chewing gum in his mouth, and he makes a bracha in the house and he walks out the door. Says the Yeshiva Zatzal that the food is in your mouth. This is not like the Chai Adam that we had in the beginning of today's share. In the beginning of today's share, we had a Chai Adam who said you made a bracha on the apple, you took a bite, and now you walked out the door. Said the Chai Adam, that bite that you made in the house and the bite that you want to make now in the street have nothing to do with each other. The fact that you're holding the apple does not unite the two eatings. So you had a shina malkum between bite number 1 and bite number 2. You need a new bar praetz. But, says Rav Moshe, by candy, a sucking candy in your mouth, so you made a shackle, you put a suck candy in your mouth, in your house, and now you walk out the door, the food was in your mouth the whole time. This is not like the Chai Adam said, that kol petisa u petisa, each bite, each piece is a new achila. It's not a new achila, this is one achila. It's in my mouth the whole time. Chewing gum, it's in my mouth the whole time. Therefore, the shina makam is not a problem. So, Paisik told me today that his reading of the Yeshiva Zatzal's tshuva would apply also if you make a bracha on your coffee, you take a drink of coffee while you're in the kitchen, and then you decide that you want to go to shul, so you take coffee and you put coffee in your mouth, and you walk out the door with coffee in your mouth, even though you're going to swallow that coffee, and halfway down the block you're going to take a new swig of coffee, since the coffee was in your mouth in the house, and it was in your mouth while you left the house, and it was in your mouth in the street, now the achila in the house and the achila in the street are one achila, and you don't need another bracha. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Mirza Hashem, we will complete this Siman in the next year. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's refuahs parnassus sheduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the Gula Shlema, but the BS God Tzedek B'Meher Yameinu Amen. Be well.